and welcome to the Shoeless Goat Podcast, Episode 1, where we discuss everything Cubs, White Sox, and MLB. I'm one of your hosts, Nick, and I'm actually privileged to be joined by the mayor of Section 509 at Guaranteed Rate Field, Patrick Bovard. Pat, how you doing today, bud?
Hey, Nick, you know what, I'm doing good, and, it's good to be serving my first term as the self-proclaimed mayor, so, in a little over a week we'll be.
How long is that term?
It's really as long as I want it to be, so it's going to go for the 2019 season, and then we'll see if this rebuild crashes and burns or if we keep it going. Yeah,
if it keeps going, or if it goes well, we'd have to almost dub you emperor of Section 509, wouldn't we?
Yeah, that's the goal, We're just going to keep building and building, developing that talent until I go from mayor to, eventually president. Really, the sky's the limit.
That's excellent to hear. Okay, so as I mentioned about 20 seconds ago, we're a brand new podcast, Shoeless Goat Podcast, where we cover everything Cubs, Sox, and MLB weekly. So you have to be tuning in on Mondays to kind of figure out what's going on in the great city of Chicago. We're a couple Chicago guys, but we're not the only hosts of this podcast. We're going to have a couple other guys coming in and out from the Let Me Be Frank blog. So you guys are going to be treated to a lot of different opinions, and we hope that you enjoy it, and we hope that we can keep this going for a while. As I said, Pat here is an avid Sox fan. I myself am a Cubs fan, Cubs employee. I've been privileged to be the ball boy, and this is my 4th season coming up, so I'm going to have some interesting stories along the way. So we're going to get going here, and I wanted to start off with recent events first, and both the Cubs and the Sox have some pretty interesting things going on recently with the last few days. So I'm going to start with you, Pat. What's going on with your White Sox? Anything good?
Well, I guess you could say that. After a really long offseason of a lot of disappointment, we at least had a bright spot a couple days ago when it was announced Eloy Jimenez agreed to terms on a 6-year contract extension worth $43 million, a deal that has the opportunity to get up to 8 years and $75 million based off options and other incentives.
Rick Cobb loves those incentives, doesn't he?
Oh, he does. Why give players the money, straight up when you could make them earn it? I guess, Rick Hahn likes his players earning their money, but yeah, the Eloy extension's great news. It's well-deserved. We don't know what he's going to turn into. Maybe this will be another Gordon Beckham, but I think Eloy's ceiling is incredibly high. His floor is also incredibly high. Deal's not binding. If it doesn't work out, it's not huge money, and this should also clear up any issues of service time. So, if Eloy's not on the field in Kansas City on opening day, I don't know what the hell this franchise is doing.
Yeah, no, I can totally see the frustration if he's not playing. And you mentioned service time, which is important. There's a lot of players who have been Chris Bryant definitely comes to mind, who are unhappy with the way they were treated at the beginning of their deals. So this is good to see the Sox are kind of getting out ahead of that.
No, and if there's anything the Sox are good at, it's convincing these young players to sign relatively long-term team-friendly deals. You got Chris Sale back in the day signing I believe it was a 5-year deal that could get up to 7 with team options that he's completing now with the Red Sox. He signed that and then was an all-star. The rest is history. Quintana was a similar deal. Tim Anderson was a similar deal. They may not spend that money in free agency, but man, do they know how to lock up those young players on good deals.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the extension later with Sale, but it looks like that the players, or the fans, I should say, are a little bit they're calming down a little bit from the recent disappointments of literally not signing anybody who's not related or friends with Manny Machado.
Hey, man, Alex Colomé isn't related.
That's true. You know what? And I loved that. That was like the first signing of the whole offseason, pretty much. Like, they went out and signed him, and then you figured, is he going to be the closer, or are they going to go Herrera at the closer spot?
From right now, all indications are pointing towards Colomé. I expect him to have more of a closer by committee to an extent between him and Herrera. You might see them still trying to put Nate Jones into that role, even though that hasn't really worked. But, I think really you're going to try to get Colomé and Herrera in there, see who you can get more out of it, hopefully flip one for some God forbid, more prospects, but we'll see what happens.
Let's hope prospects that are healthy, big horse guys.
Yeah, whatever it is, you just got to, whatever physicals you need to put him through, make him see Dr. James Andrews up there in Minnesota, whatever it is, they got to screen these guys. They got to figure out what's going on.
Now, I want to go back to what you said about maybe or maybe not Eloy is the next Gordon Beckham. that blew my mind because how tall was Gordon Beckham? Like 5'9" or something like that?
He's was not that big. I don't think it was more than 6 foot. He was not that big of a guy.
Yeah, and I mean, put them next to each other. It's just two totally different specimens, but who knows how it's going to work out. I mean, the Cubs fans are hoping that our side of that trade actually pans out too. But we'll jump to the Cubs in a little bit. I heard you have a little bit more Sox news with us. I mean, we're going to do, two apiece, just the recent news, and then we'll really get into it. But what else you got on the Sox end, just to get fans a little bit excited?
So, yeah, the other big news recently, Carlos Rodon was named the opening day starter. Rodon, the former first-round pick out of South Carolina, had an up-and-down career so far. He showed some signs last year after he came back from injury. It wasn't that shocking of a decision. He's one of the better pitchers on the staff, whatever that may be worth. But in my eyes, it was really down to two guys, him or Reynaldo Lopez. Personally, I would have given the ball to Lopez. I think he showed a little bit more last year. He's younger. He's a pitcher that's part of that rebuild. So, maybe he's a better signal. But, I mean, overall, the Rodon news, it was somewhat expected. They weren't going to trot out Lucas Giolito in his, 5.5 and second to Tyler Chatwood walk out there on opening day. They weren't going to trot out Irvin Santana, who Kenny got 5 years too late. And it certainly wasn't going to be Ivan Nova. So that left Lopez and Rodon basically at the flip of a coin. And Rodon at this point is, he should be the ace. We really need to see some steps out of him this year. So I guess they're trying to give him all the confidence that they can.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I did think that also that Lopez had the better stuff and the better showing last year. But flip side of that coin is that Rodon needs the confidence boost more. And what better way to do that than giving him the ball on opening day?
Yeah, I mean, he's been around longer. He's always had flashes, but it's, just being able to consistently last longer into games, get guys out, throw strikes. Lopez, to me, has that electricity factor that you want in an ace that Rodon doesn't necessarily have. But I guess at this point in the careers between the two, it's not really a jaw dropper to go either way.
Yeah, and actually, I didn't even hear. I just assumed Lopez was going to be the starter, just from my limited Sox, watching. I probably go to 5-6 games a year, and I'll watch about 20 of them compared to the 50 or 60 Cup games I go to a year. So my knowledge is a little bit lacking, but I thought Lopez was going to be the guy, and the only reason I found out that Rodon was the guy was because I follow his girlfriend on Twitter, and she was posting about it. So I got that news from her. So she seemed very excited about it. And I can only imagine how he's feeling.
Hey, good for him. But I guess, on that note, she must be one of those Twitter tough guys that Rick Hahn is talking about breaking news. So,
yeah, you got to stay away from that crowd. Pujols' wife comes to mind with that whole fiasco about 7-8 years ago. Anyway, so that's what's going on Sox-wise. Of course, the season is starting next week, so we're going to have a lot more upcoming, what's going on news in that regard once we've got a couple of games under our belt. I see the Sox starting off hot like they always do. We'll see what happens, but we'll talk about predictions later. We're going to go to Cubs now, and there's some actually very interesting information. I'd love to hear your take on it from the mayor of the White Sox section. Ian Happ was sent down to AAA, I believe it was yesterday, so making it Saturday the 23rd. Pretty shocking move for Cubs fans, and definitely some mixed reactions. His recent play, definitely in the spring, certainly warranted the conversation that he should be sent down. But it's still, he's been almost a mainstay to a fault these last year and a half, 2 years, where he comes out with the great plays. What comes to mind, the homer to start the season last year. But then the insane number of strikeouts, that's your flip side. That's probably what ticks off, Joe and company a little bit more. So a big name getting sent down, much to the chagrin of a fair amount of fans. I just want to hear, I was shocked by it. I thought they'd send down a reliever or so, but to fit the roster, they're going to send him down to make sure that he's ready to come up and produce in the way that he was promised to produce, which as of right now he hasn't. So what do you think about that, Pat? Do you think that that's a good idea to send down someone like that who's been on the roster for a year and a half?
I guess my first thing to say is that's as a team, that's a good problem to have, where you're needing to send down guys like that to make room. The White Sox just sent down Nicky Delmonico, totally kind of similar, but not really situation. I mean, I guess I can't really blame them. At a certain point, you have to show something. I remember a similar situation with Listella a few years ago. They sent Schwarber down. I guess that was off an injury, but I guess they only have a certain number of guys. They gotta have Hayward out there. They're gonna have Zobrist out there this year, and if you compare him to Almora, like in way less time, Almora's numbers are pretty much better across the board. So as long as his attitude is right, it could work. But I mean, you also run the risk of if he's pissed about it, then he goes down there, wallows, and just keeps complaining until he gets his way out of town, which I don't know, he's still only 24. He's got a lot of time to figure it out. So you just, at this point, you got to hope he and a couple other guys start to figure out what they're doing there at the plate.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned his attitude. Supposedly, he is not taking it very well. Joe Madden came out and said that he's pissed, or he said he's mad at all of us right now. And then you had a couple guys like John Lester having pretty long statements about how it sucks that he's getting sent down. He's a great guy. Like, guys supporting him. So it's not necessarily a rift between the players and management, but it's definitely not a good thing. Even further back, Rizzo got sent down. I'm glad you mentioned Stella, Schwarber. Those guys all got sent down, and they ended up coming back up and improving.
No, yeah. If you want to stay on the major league roster, at a certain point, you just gotta produce. And if he goes down, works on it a little bit, eventually somebody's gonna get hurt. Nobody's thinking he's gonna be in AAA the whole season. He's gonna be in Chicago at some point, just making the most of it once he gets up there.
Right, and he came up as a second baseman, and then as soon as he got to the majors, they tossed him in center field. And when he was in center field, he was making miraculous diving catches, but the only reason he was having opportunities to make those diving catches was because he was having bad reads on the ball. Of course, he was a freak athlete, so he made up for it, but if you're going to send a guy, it was almost like a bad decision to put him right in center right away. I mean, there was like a log jam in the middle infield, so they felt like they wanted the bat, they just didn't know where to put him. So I think if they send him down, make him play center field, make him learn the position, he'll be a much more valuable asset when he's back up. And hopefully the strikeouts go down like they did with Rizzo and they did with Javi when he was having strikeout problems too. So
yeah, as long as he's able to change his approach, as he gets older and sees more pitching, that should happen. So yeah, like you said, if he can learn center field, if he can just put the ball in play a little bit more, he's going to be a much more valuable asset to that team than what he currently is.
Definitely. All right. So we hope he comes, or at least I hope he comes back up, ready to go. For the sake of the Crosstown Cup, you probably don't think so. But I want to move to the other smaller story. My phone buzzed, I want to say it was Thursday night, and it was a message saying Darvish getting looked at on the mound for injury. And I'm thinking to myself, not again, guys. So a quick Twitter search, and I find out it's a blister on his finger. Now, as a massive fan of Kerry Wood, blisters still scare the shit out of me. Which, so should bathtubs.
Yeah, you don't want to. You don't want anything to do with bathtubs. Those are just they're no good.
Or what was it? Who was it? Joel Zamaya, who hurt himself playing guitar.
Yeah, he got like a carpal tunnel or something like that from too much guitar hero, which is, of all the injuries, that's got to be up there. It's like Sammy Sosa throwing his back out sneezing. I guess, there's danger everywhere.
We could do a whole mini-sode on, like, the crazy baseball injuries that are just – you don't want to hear them, but they're actually great.
It's a miracle. It's a miracle Chris Sale didn't hurt himself cutting up those jerseys.
Yeah, you know what? Dealing with sharp objects like that, you got to be careful.
You don't want your ace doing that.
Those things were hideous.
I mean, I don't blame him.
For the right reasons. But anyway, so he's got a blister on his finger. They took him out of the game. He's putting the cream on it. Apparently he's doing better. He's joking with the media, saying he pissed on it. Then he said, no, I didn't, but I don't believe him. I think he did, which is fine. Do what you got to do to get ready to pitch, third in the rotation, second rotation, wherever they're putting him at. And then he just did pitch today on Sunday in a minor league appearance. Supposedly no discomfort, ready to go. So that's all really. Darvish has a lot to prove this year. Don't get me wrong, but all the criticism that came from last year, I want to say, was almost unwarranted, based on the fact that he put so much pressure on himself to live up to his contract that he went out there, I guarantee you, on opening day, not feeling 100%. Continued to do that until tweaking pain turned into injury. Now it's season 2, and he finds himself having to double down on the pressure he's putting on himself. But I like the approach he's taken. He's doing all his interviews in English. He's messing with the media like this. So I think we're going to see, or at least I really hope we see, a whole new Darvish.
No, yeah, it's a good you bring up a good point, like just the pressure he's had on himself. You know, he went to L.A., didn't have the best performance in that World Series, comes to Chicago on a huge money deal, paid like an ace, you know, on a team that's World Series or bust. There's no other way. And, yeah, you just that's a lot to put on a player, which, I mean, you can make the argument if you're getting paid that, you know what you're getting yourself into. But hopefully now, after a year of having some time to settle in, he'll be able to, you know, show a little bit more this year, earn some of that money. I guess, you know, on the flip side of the coin, you got a lot of other good starters in there. So, if he slots in as a 4 to start the year, that's not a big deal. That's better than what they got out of him last year.
Yeah, I'm noticing we're using the flip side of the coin quite a bit. I'm going to keep rolling with it. I don't really care. We're going to keep flipping that coin because that's what baseball's all about. Not really, that's football. Yeah, so I think that's all we have for recent news. I mean, once the season starts, we're going to be flying through this stuff. But I want to move on to not necessarily predictions, but let's talk best and worst case scenarios for our teams. So by best case scenario, I mean, what would happen? What would it take for you to consider the White Sox season a victory? And then on the flip side of the coin, worst case scenario, what would make you feel that this White Sox season was just repugnant, just bad? Like, what would it take? So we're going to start with that first one because we always want to start on that positive.
So you know, I want to say is, like, you know, the meatball fan in me. I'm the type of guy who took Avi Garcia in the first round of the fantasy baseball draft last year. I've taken Tim Anderson top 10 rounds both years. I want to say compete for a wild card spot, which, you know, on paper, the lineup, the pitching isn't there. I know the lineup isn't really there, but, you know, the AL Central is garbage. The Indians are doing everything they can to not win. The Royals and the Tigers might be worse than the Sox. And the Twins, I don't really know. But I'm going to take a step back. What I want to see this year is I need to see something out of Giolito and Lopez, something more. Giolito needs to be able to stay in this rotation. We can't have another Carson Fulmer. In the field, we need Moncada to start putting the ball in play more. You know, he's got a great eye. He can hit the ball, but he really needs to start putting it together, especially now moving over to third base. You know, third base, generally, offensive production, you're going to get more than your second baseman. So we're going to need to see something there. You know, Eloy Rookie of the Year, I think that's a no-brainer, at least being in the conversation. If he's not there, I'm going to be disappointed. Outside of that, you're going to look for solid development out of these guys. Maybe Dylan Cease comes up, pitches a little bit. We have some prospects get through the season without blowing out their frickin' elbows. I don't need another Michael Kopech situation where I'm landing on a plane from Hong Kong and getting the news that he's done for a year. I don't need that in my life anymore. I think that's really it. You just need these guys to take steps forward. The wins don't matter as much. It's just you can't have guys taking steps back like it seemed a lot of people did last year.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned Eloy Rookie of the Year. I think that would be manna from the sky for White Sox fans, just like saving grace. You know, as rough as the offseason was and as low as the expectations are, it was kind of like when Derrick Rose was coming up, right? He got Rookie of the Year.
Yeah,
right?
No, it's a symbol. It's a symbol that this thing's working, that like we should actually believe what the front office is telling us, because right now we have not had a lot of that.
Yeah, they've definitely not done you any favors, but I like that. You know what? And the wild card thing, you say the AL Central's bad, but the AL East and the AL West are not bad. So I think that's where the wild cards are going to come from.
I guess I should have said competing for the division more so than a wild card, but you know, that a fringe playoff team, that would be, you know, we have Manny Machado, maybe we're there, but you know, realistically, unless we get some 05 spark of magic, we're nowhere close.
Yeah, and as a non-Sox fan, what I do want to see from the White Sox is to not be sellers at the deadline. I want, even if they're not in the playoff picture, I want to see them looking to be buyers for the next season.
No, yeah, you got some good veterans on there. Like Yonder Alonso is not a bad piece. He's not necessarily what you need on this team, but he's not, that's a solid pickup. John Jay, veteran leadership is probably more necessary on a playoff team, but it's not bad. Jose Abreu, hopefully we can re-sign him. But there's the bullpen solid too. It's just, the biggest question marks are going to be the starting pitchers and the young guys taking steps forward. And some of these prospects that have come up in the field, Moncada, Anderson continuing to move forward, Eloy. We're just going to need to keep seeing steps forward. You just cannot have steps backward at this point.
Yeah, you're going to like John Jay a lot. He spent a little bit of time with the Cubs, and if he's like within 4 spots of coming up in the batting order, you'll see him at the top step on one knee, really into it, really watching the pitcher, really cheering his guys on. So he's a really good guy to have. I liked that signing as much as the intentions of the signing may have been for other reasons. All right, I'm going to go with mine. We'll do the best back-to-back best case scenarios, and then we'll do our worst case scenarios in a little bit, which would be kind of sad. But anyway, best case scenario for the Cubs, and not a lot of Cubs fans are going to be happy when I say this, is not World Series victory, but World Series appearance. So they won in 2016. They lost to the Dodgers to get to the World Series. Then they had the wild card that I wouldn't even call it a collapse. The Brewers just got mega hot and passed them up in that last 163rd game. And then the wild card loss, which in a one-game series, anything can happen, as we saw in 15 with Arrieta on the mound against the Pirates.
Yep.
World Series appearance would be huge. I think it would be absolutely huge because you show the fans that the window isn't closed, which some fans are moronic enough to think that it is, and that this team can compete. Of course, would I love the win? Absolutely. I wouldn't. But I'm not. If they lose in the World Series, I'm not going to be pouting and saying, what a waste of a year. Because that's not a waste of a year. You made a World Series. So that's where I'm at with best case scenario.
I think that's a good way to put it. Like, getting the World Series is difficult. I mean, shit, the team I'm a fan of has been in the playoffs 9 times in 120 years. The Cubs have been in the playoffs the last 4 years. Like, yeah, you lost in the wild card game, but that's still, a hell of a run that they've had the last couple of years. And just if they can put together a run to at least put themselves in position to win another championship, you can't really ask for much more than that. You're witnessing the golden age of Cubs baseball. You've never seen anything like this before, so just keep enjoying the ride while it's here.
Yeah, what really pisses me off is when people say that the wild card appearance you didn't make the playoffs. I've had people say, like, I was like, they made the playoffs the last 3 years. And they're like, yeah, but they only made the wild card last year. I go, is that not the playoffs? Like, that is definitely the playoffs. You're winner go home.
You're the most wins in the National League until the last day of the season. That's about as good of a season as you can have. It just happened that the Brewers, like Christian Yelich, couldn't get out for 3 weeks. So, it is what it is.
Yeah, I was not mad about it. I was just more like, it's like your parents. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. I expected more, but I didn't get more. But I'm not mad about it.
You're used to more. It sucks when they don't get there.
That's true. Okay, I'm going to ask you for this one's going to hurt. What would make this White Sox season just repugnant, just unbelievably bad? What's the worst thing that you can see?
So I'm going to take wins and losses off the table. I'm fully expecting somewhere between 90 to 100 losses, regardless of if the season's a success or a failure. What makes this year a failure is Giolito continues to walk guys and his ERA blows up. One more year of that, and he might not be around much longer. Maybe Lopez doesn't progress. Moncada continues to strike out and can't adjust. That would be a disaster. Eloy, it's his rookie year, so it's hard to say. I would be disappointed if he's not in Rookie of the Year contention, but, if he just looks lost out there, that would be a disappointment. I think the biggest thing, though, above all of that is just health. Like, there's a lot of veterans on the team. I don't really care how they play. Like, or like a guy like, with all due respect, guys like that aren't going to be around for the long term. I am not really as concerned with their performance. But, if we keep having, like the Dane Dunnings and Michael Kopechs of the world getting hurt, like that sets the rebuild back another year. And then God knows if we're ever going to get there. So biggest things for this year it's just, we get more significant injuries where guys are missing years at a time. That combined with a bad major league team would just be a gut punch.
Yeah, definitely. I I think those are pretty realistic. I'm glad you took wins and losses out of it because, like you said, they don't really matter if you're not expecting to win. I'm going to jump to the Cubs really quick because I really don't have anything to say that pretty much summed it up. I'm going to go with the Cubs, and I'm going to go with just not making the playoffs this year. That would be a real gut punch because that would mean the Brewers and the Cardinals probably are ahead of them, leaving the Cubs out of the wild card if let's say the Rockies have a better record, something like that. The Cardinals adding Goldschmidt, they have two really solid pitchers. You have the Brewers staying with pretty much their same roster. I know Corey Knebel just got hurt. But to not make the playoffs would really stink because although the division could be one of the best divisions in baseball history, this team still should compete for a playoff spot. I'm not even talking about winning the division. Get to the wild card game, learn from your mistake last year, and use that wild card momentum to make a deep playoff run. But not making the playoffs doesn't even give you that chance, and then you have a whole nother year of question marks with, oh, is Joe the guy? What happened here? And things like that. So, yeah, that's my take.
I think
no playoffs is awesome.
I think that's a good way to look at it. Because with that division you guys got over there, the Cardinals are improved. The Brewers are the Brewers still. The Reds are going to be not a doormat. The Pirates are going to be decent. They're not going to be good. They're not going to be a great team, but they're not going to be awful. So it's a lot of challenges in there. You could be looking at like a 2006 AL Central scenario, which, like you said, that still leaves plenty of space for a wild card spot. So, yeah, I'd agree. At this point, with the Cubs in their window, with guys, getting older every year, they got to keep taking advantage of that and at least get themselves in the playoffs.
Right, and by no means are the Cubs old, but there's a difference between old and older. You don't want to waste a year of someone's prime, someone's peak by messing up in the middle of the season. So yeah, we got our best case, our worst case. Let's get out of that. We're actually going to move to our last thing. We're just going to discuss. We're a Cubs, White Sox, and MLB podcast. What the hell's going on? Everyone extending their guys. Why do you think that is? I mean, we had Goldschmidt, we had Sale, we had Verlander just signed 2 years, 66. I mean, the list goes on and on. Arenado started the trend. You had Trout sign the most massive deal. Why do you think that is?
So I think part of it is you're seeing what happens with what happened this year with Manny Machado, Bryce Harper, and even beyond that, Dallas Keuchel isn't signed 4 days before the season starts. Craig Kimbrell isn't there. So whether that's guys asking for too much or just a bad market, these guys are seeing what's happening in free agency. They're seeing that the deals aren't necessarily getting done. So I think that their team comes along and offers them this massive deal. Why wouldn't you take it? It's financial security. You're familiar in that place. I think free agency is the biggest thing. All signs are headed towards a possible strike in a few years. I think these players, they just want to take advantage of big deals while they have them on the table because, who knows, they get to free agency and they could just evaporate and nothing's there. And I don't think anybody wants to be in that situation.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think one of the craziest things that's going to be the outcome of this extension bonanza, for lack of a better term, the trade deadline is going to be psycho.
Oh, yeah.
Because everyone's going to want to trade for a guy they can immediately extend, or there's going to be some sign-in trades because no one trusts free agency anymore, and they shouldn't trust free agency. There's
no reason to. It's these guys aren't getting the deals that they should be. The Padres were able to come and give Manny what he wanted 3 months later, and he signed there. I mean, outside of the Phillies, who was seriously going after Bryce Harper on a long-term deal? Nobody. And
Manny got exactly what everyone knew he wanted.
Yep.
And it still took 3 months.
Yep. Which is, it's insane. Like we said, you had all these guys that were going to be free agents, but now none of them are. They're all getting extended. So that's the flip. That's the I guess, keep our phrase going, flip side of the coin. Free agency is going to be dry these next couple of summers or winters.
That's kind of why I said that the Sox should be buyers at the deadline, regardless of where they are, is because then they could work on extending guys just like everybody else is doing. It seems that they were waiting for a free agency, and then when they didn't get Machado or Harper, they're like, oh, we'll get Arenado. Arenado extends. So what they're going to have to do, if they're smart, is to be proactive and trade for guys and then extend them as opposed to waiting for free agency and hoping. I think trading is better because you can ensure that you're going to get the guy.
Well, we got Kenny Williams out there. Maybe he's going to go out there and bring Alex Gordon home finally. So, we'll see what happens.
And Bartolo. Alex Gordon and Bartolo are. How many times are you going to play the I'm Coming Home song if they sign Bartolo?
It's, the former ace of the, when was he here, like 2003? Him and Kingpin Esteban Loaiza was a hell of a rotation.
Oh, man, that is a name. Anyway, great. It was a great conversation, Pat. This was a great way to start off the show. Again, we'll be doing this every week, and it'll be a lot more hustle and bustle once the season gets going, but we're really looking forward to opening day. I just got one last question for you before we get out of here. You have $10 in your pocket. You're at Guaranteed Rate Field. What food are you getting immediately when you get to the park?
Okay, so that's a no-brainer. I'm getting my favorite thing at the entire stadium. There's one stand. It's around down the third baseline. It's also in the upper deck. I don't know where, but the Cuban sandwich, best food at the place that's not one of the like sit-down restaurants. You don't see that everywhere. That's the one thing about the rate. Great food, a lot of good options, a lot of different options. But if I have to go with one thing, and that's the one thing I'm getting, the Cuban is going number one on my draft board. It's a hell of a sandwich. I think the people say the best Cuban sandwiches are actually made at Guaranteed Rate Field. It's incredible.
Yeah, I think you just go up to the counter and say, "I'll have the Abreu."
Oh yeah, you got a lot of options. You got Abreu, Moncada. A lot of the White Sox Cuba pipeline has just been going strong ever since Minnie Minoso back in the day.
Perfect. All right, Pat, it's been great. I look forward to many, many episodes. Maybe we'll get some guest stars going. But good episode 1. It's good talking to you. Again, this is the Shoeless Goat Podcast, and episode 2 will be out this time next week. Thanks, guys.